To my knowledge, this reintroduction project for Nelson's checker mallow in the Willamette Valley is the largest scale reintroduction project for an endangered plant in the whole United States. We're working with more plants and achieving many, many higher numbers than generally is required for delisting of an endangered species. And so the scale we're working at is huge, and also the accomplishments we're getting with this species are very, very strong. So this makes this a unique and I think a model approach for endangered species recovery.
Why do we care about Nelson's checker mallow? Well, first of all, it's an important part of the prairie community. It provides many services to pollinators. It has lots of nectar.
I'm Tom Kaye with the Institute for Applied Ecology, and we're standing here at the IAE office in downtown Corvallis. We have a native plant garden in our front yard here, and we've got a lot of plants, including Nelson's checker mallow. So this plant here in our native plant garden is Nelson's checker mallow, and we're going to tell you some more about that today. This is a threatened species. It's been on a trajectory towards extinction for the last couple of decades, but we're working really hard to reverse that trend and actually bring it back to full recovery so it no longer has to be listed as an endangered species. So 15 years ago, we started the Institute for Applied Ecology as a nonprofit organization, and the mission of the group is to conserve native species and habitats through restoration, research, and education. And so that's what we do, is programs in each of those areas. And one of the habitats we really target is prairies in the Willamette Valley. And I really want to communicate with people that the prairies are such a significant ecosystem here. And because of habitat loss from urbanization, agriculture, invasive species, etc., these ecosystems have declined to the point where many of the species that live in them are now endangered. They're actually listed as endangered species. And they're headed for extinction without dramatic and sustained conservation efforts. And it really is a community process. We need the whole population in our area to be aware of these prairies and to be backing this effort to conserve them. The good news is that with that kind of effort, we can succeed. We can really get these prairies to be restored, and we can bring back these species that are heading on these downward declining trajectories. So the success is really in our reach, and we're doing the research and the on-the-ground restoration at large scales that it takes to make that happen. So it's very exciting for me. That's really what I want to communicate. So part of our mission is education, outreach to our communities. And some of our programming works with kids in schools. We'll involve kids at the middle school age, sometimes younger, and high school, but mostly middle school, in restoration activities where they can grow plants in their own schools, sometimes at the school greenhouse, and then bring them out and plant them at our restoration sites. One of the projects we have actually includes kids in restoration planning, where each child will make a restoration plan for a plot of ground and help with growing the plants for that restoration, and then bring them out and put those plants in the ground. Why that is important is it's very much a place-based kind of education. It grows conservation stewards, because when you plant something in the ground, you've made an emotional and spiritual commitment to that organism, and that connects you to your environment. So when kids do that, they do that at an early age. It becomes part of their fiber. That's how we can educate the next generation about the importance of the outdoors, the importance of habitats, is by involving them directly with getting their hands dirty and really making a commitment beyond a one-day field trip. Why do prairies matter? Well, there are a number of reasons why they're significant. First off, because of the scale at which they used to occur and the declines they faced, the species are becoming endangered, and that is costing our society money and time to restore those species. And of course, some of these habitats provide other functions that people need. For example, we're standing in a wetland right now. Wetlands provide a number of ecosystem services. The biggest ones are stormwater retention and clean water. So without wetlands, we have poor quality water in our environment, and we have flooding problems. So these ecosystems, sometimes it's hard to understand what good are they to people? But when you look into it, they are providing services that we use. And of course, one of the most important to me is that they're places for reflection, for understanding the world, for understanding ourselves. So without these ecosystems, we're less. And the real motivation for me is one that's more of an ethical one and more of a whole being one.
There's a lot of benefits to the plant community and to wildlife through restoring this site. Whereas previously it was quite a weedy area, the efforts that we've put in over several years have produced a really functioning native plant community that's of benefit to pollinators and native wildlife alike.
Sometimes people ask, why are native species important to the ecosystem? And fundamentally, native species are the ecosystem. That's the ecosystem we're trying to support, is made up of native plants, wildlife, with native wildlife that use the environment and provide functions that like stormwater retention or clean water. Those are the species that do that. And so when we talk about ecosystem restoration, we're using native species, and those native species are important. And so that's why we have to include native species in our restorations.
Hi, I'm Melanie Gisler, and I'm the program director for our habitat restoration program at the Institute for Applied Ecology. And we're here at Marys River Natural Area in Corvallis at a restoration site. And I'm here to tell you about a really exciting project we're doing to recover a threatened species. It's Nelson's checker mallow, and I'm sitting right in front of the beautiful flower of Nelson's checker mallow. One of the reasons why we have selected this plant over some of the other plants that are listed as threatened or endangered is because this was the plant that had the highest potential for success. We know how to collect the seed, we know how to produce the seed, and when you seed it in a restoration site, it establishes. So that was a key determinant for why we picked this plant. Well, in order to get the seed, we had to figure out, where is this plant growing in nature? And so we looked all around the Willamette Valley to see if we could find any remaining populations of this plant. And we went out with hand collection crews and carefully collected the seed of this plant. And we could only get a small amount because if you get too many, you actually compromise those natural populations. And then we took these tiny amounts of seed and handed it over to a farmer who then increased it so that we had a lot of seed to use in restoration. In fact, by the end of our project, we had over 700 pounds of seed of this threatened species. And that's even a lot of seed for a common plant, and it's quite a bit for a rare plant.
Hi, I'm Peter Moore. I'm one of the habitat restoration ecologists with the Institute for Applied Ecology, and I'm working on the Nelson's checker mallow recovery project. And we're at Marys River today at our experimental plots. And here we're comparing the success of planting out seeds versus potted plugs versus taking pieces of rhizomes. And so we've got these plots behind me here that we'll show you in a bit more detail. And the plugs and the rhizomes were planted out in a grid. We've got quarter-acre plots here, and the plants were planted every metre. And as part of the monitoring of that project, we're going to count the numbers of plants that have survived since they were planted in 2010 to see how well they're doing. And we've done that at 6 sites in total, and Marys River is one of those sites. At Marys River, where we've seeded over several large areas, we've got something like up to 20,000 plants have established here. Well, we were pleased. We were hoping for high survival, and we're pleased to report with these experiments that we can put a lot of plants on the ground with seed, but also with plugs they can produce bigger plants and they flower more earlier and start reproducing. So there's different techniques you can do for a fine scale versus large scale restoration, and this information is helping to give us more data for future restoration. I got interested in conservation as a younger man in New Zealand. I got really into native birds in New Zealand and had a career there working for Department of Conservation. And part of that brought me to doing restoration to help shorebirds. And eventually, to cut a long story short, here I am working for the Institute for Applied Ecology on native plant restoration to help wildlife and other species, as well as the native plant communities themselves. So we've been very successful at several endangered species programs, including the Nelson's checker mallow project. And a question might be, well, okay, we've restored the species back to this area, Mary's River natural area. Can we just walk away from that and move on to something else? Well, we can't really do that because there are invasive species that are moving in all the time. So there has to be a maintenance program to protect this area from invasive species and to keep the quality going over time. It takes quite a lot of work to maintain a restoration site, and we've been trying to keep this as clean of weeds as we can. We have contractors that help us with herbicide control, and we use herbicides for some weed control, but we also do hand weeding using youth cores. We've used the Northwest Youth Corps last year to help us weed this whole area that you see behind us. And also each year the city of Corvallis mow these sites, or every 2 years they mow these areas to keep the thatch down and help keep some of the invasive species away through mowing.
This looks good. And there's a lot of seedlings of the checker mallow as well that have come in from these plants that were established 4 years ago. So they've been here long enough that they're starting to toss down seeds, and those seeds are actually making seedlings, which is how you tell if a restoration is really successful, is if the plants start reproducing on their own and maintaining themselves at the site. So that's really exciting.
The experiment helps us to plan for other future restoration efforts, because it might be more cost effective to plant the potted plants because you get good survival and the plants grow large, and so they're then seeding and helping to establish the plant around it. The other technique is to cut pieces of the rhizome, the underground material of the plant, and plant that out. That's one technique that we're testing. And the third technique is to sow seed, which we've got from our production fields, and sow at 5 pounds an acre and get thousands of seeds out on the landscape.
This is a great example of a restored wetland. The dominant vegetation here is tufted hairgrass. This is tall grass. And this was mentioned in early accounts from even Lewis and Clark and David Douglas of explorers in the Willamette Valley walking through the Willamette Valley before there were any residences or farms here, and noting that this grass was shoulder high. It was even covering up part of their horses when they're riding through. So we know this was the dominant grass here historically. And it is then one of the grasses we use in our seed mixes for this species, for wetlands. So when we put seeds out on the landscape, we match the seed mix to the habitat type. And when it's wetlands, we almost always include tufted hairgrass because it's such an important grass here. And when we have high diversity and high quality systems like this, we get things like abundant pollinators, western meadowlarks, goldfinches come in and use this area. We're hearing western or red-winged blackbirds in the background here. This site's in a process of healing, and you can see the abundance of wildlife and animals that start to use this system. Well, the Oregon flora has about 4,000 species of plants in it. In Western Oregon, in our restorations, we work with probably between 100 and 150, but we also have a subset of those that are really our workhorse species that's probably on the order of 20 to 30 that we use a lot, use frequently, because they establish well and they're very important for ecosystem function. And historically, they were very abundant too. This is the Nelson's checker mallow. This is a really nice one. And then down here, this plant down here, this is called Klamath weed or St. John's wort. And these beetles on it are a biocontrol agent that was released a few decades ago to try to kill the St. John's wort. And it has helped, actually. This beetle attacks the St. John's wort, eats the leaves, eats the flowers, and limits its spread. And you can see all these beetles on top of these flowers here, just munching away, doing what they're supposed to do.
This is a wild onion, and it's a key nectar species for the endangered butterfly, Fender's blue butterfly.
This plant over here, this is big leaf lupin, pretty abundant in the Willamette Valley in prairies, generally in wetter sites. And it's really popular with bumblebees. The bumblebees are all over this guy here. This is called one-sided sedge, Carex unilateralis. It's a native sedge that grows in wet areas. This is called popcorn flower, and it's very fragrant. You can smell it on the breeze around here, and it smells to me like Pepto-Bismol. So here's self-heal, Prunella vulgaris, another restoration species. That's the hyacinth brodia. Culturally significant and an important nectar plant for butterflies and other insects in the prairies. This is the tricolored monkey flower, and it's very uncommon in the Willamette Valley. Most of our projects are based in Oregon, and so the problems we're trying to solve are relevant to Oregonians. And that might be how to control an invasive species that's taking over some of the wildlands, and be very relevant here, like with blackberry or false brome. These are very, very destructive species that are taking over landscapes, transforming ecosystems, and are the major cause of some of our current declines. So we need science to understand better how to attack these problems. And so that's the kind of science we do. We use applied ecology, which means we're studying techniques with a scientific method to improve the ability we have for restoring wildlife or habitats or plants, etc. So we may do a restoration and fold into it an experiment at the same time to learn as we go. And this work with Nelson's checker mallow is a prime example, where we're trying seeding rhizomes, plugs, in a controlled environment and replicate it so that we can understand which of these techniques works the best and is the cheapest, so we can go at a larger scale and really recover species. I was really lucky to grow up in Portland, Oregon, across the street from Forest Park. And that was really my playground as a child, and I think really helped imprint with me a love of nature and a sense of stewardship for the environment. I was fortunate to go to college, and then when I got out of college, I knew I wanted to do one of two things. I wanted to either be a geologist or a botanist. And I applied for two jobs, and I didn't get the geology job, but I got the botany job. And that really set the course for me. And I worked for the National Park Service and did vegetation studies at Olympic National Park. And then I returned to Oregon and did my graduate work at Oregon State University. Go Beavers. And I did my work in plant ecology and have since spent my career working to restore plant communities and work with endangered species and do research that supports the restoration of these landscapes. The current projects we're working on include reintroductions of other endangered species too, like golden paintbrush, which has gone extinct in Oregon, but we're bringing him back. Kincaid's lupin, recovery of that species, and that one is a host plant for a endangered butterfly, the Fender's blue. So by working on those species, we're really getting a twofer. We're recovering two species at once. One of the projects we're just getting going is called Plants for People. We're working with the local Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde and also other partners like government agencies to restore habitats and especially wetlands with an eye towards some of the plants that are most culturally significant, so that the Confederated Tribe members can come and use those habitats for some of these plant materials. and also getting nurseries going that can produce some of these culturally significant plants on tribal lands and give that capacity more to the tribe so they can be working on habitat restoration too. So what can people do in their own environments, in their own communities to help with prairie habitats and other habitats? Keep weeds out of your own yard. Weeds are a major drag on the recovery and the health of these systems. So controlling invasive species, even in your own yard or in your own neighborhood, is really important, and you can make a difference. People can do in their own communities in the yards can also include planting vegetation or creating a structure that's good for birds or plants that they want. Getting involved in backyard wildlife certification. That's something you can do online and gives you a lot of information on how to create a wildlife-friendly habitat, even in your backyard. Supporting your local nonprofits and land trusts who are acquiring properties and restoring their conditions. That's something you can really do and should. Volunteering with those same organizations or with your local conservation groups, maybe it's a county group, etc., doing weed polls, that kind of thing. So there's a lot you can do on the ground that can really make a difference. This fall, we'll be putting on an event called the Invasive Species Cook-Off, at which we will be inviting chefs from the Portland area and elsewhere to prepare meals with ingredients that are from invasive species. So our goal isn't to eat them to beat them per se, but to raise awareness about invasive species by bringing people to the table, literally, to have conversations about invasive species and enjoy in a light-hearted environment some of the things you can do with invasive species. What sets the Institute for Applied Ecology apart from other nonprofits in our region, the niche we fill, is the breadth of our approach. We do research, and we do on-the-ground restoration, and we do outreach, extensive outreach to school kids, to adults, even to the prison system. That combination is unique. So we're not an advocacy group per se, but we're an implementation on-the-ground group. And we bring the resources that we have and that we can garner through grants and contracts on the ground to get real things done to improve conditions for the community in Oregon. That's our mission. Our organization really depends on partnerships with a lot of different organizations. So we work closely with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Forest Service, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, etc. We also work with state agencies like the Oregon State Parks. We work with the Nature Conservancy. We work with counties like Benton County, where we are today. These are important partners for us. We work with Metro in the Portland area. Without that connection to the broader community of partners that own and manage lands, we couldn't really accomplish our mission. So that makes our mission really include establishing these partnerships with large landowning organizations that can manage the properties and sometimes have funding to support that. One of our important partners is Portland Metro. We're working with them to restore habitat in some of the natural area parks in the metro area. Metro is also supporting our native plant materials cooperative in the Willamette Valley. So this is a group of partners that have all pooled together to work at collecting seeds and putting those seeds into production in an agricultural setting, and then harvesting many, many more seeds than we could have collected in the wild to support restoration on the ground. So we need a diversity of seeds, of populations for these seeds, and Metro's helping with that. They're also helping us with the collection and the grow out and the distribution. So they're a key partner in our Willamette Valley Plant Materials Partnership. So prior to our restoration activities here, the ground cover of natives was very low, probably in the range of 5%. But with our continued restoration, we've been able to nudge that way higher, way over the 50% mark, and to the point where the habitat here will count towards recovery, and the number of checker mallows has gone from 0 to well over 20,000 plants here. So we've far exceeded our objectives by this sustained effort.
I really enjoy being involved in the conservation field, and getting to work here with a threatened species like Nelson's checker mallow has been very satisfying. And just being able to show that we can bring a species back from the brink of extinction through a little bit of hard work and partnerships with a whole lot of organisations, and getting volunteers involved and school children, really bringing in a community effort to bring back species from extinction. It shows that you can do it.